The Evil Within 2 is an interesting beast. I was pretty happy with the first game back in 2014, and I don't remember having any real major complaints other than the controls were a little clunky and Sebastian was a pretty lame character all in all. Unfortunately, very little progress has been made on those two fronts in Evil Within 2. However, the game definitely plays smoother and feels more optimized than the original. Maybe that's because Tango Gameworks didn't have to spend time and resources making 4 different versions, 2 of which being on hardware that was a decade old. Whatever the reason, I was glad to see that the graphics and the performance have taken a noticeable step in the right direction in the sequel. Like I said though, this game does very little to address the actual issues with the first one. And the biggest change, which is going from a linear game to more of an open world formula, felt particularly unnatural to me. Out of all of the complaints about the first game, the linearity was the least concerning to me. I personally have no problem with linear games. Some games work better in an open world, some are better as a linear game. I've honestly never seen a problem with that, but apparently Tango Gameworks disagrees, so we have an open world Evil Within game now. And to me, the open world elements didn't really add up to much. There aren't many side quests, there aren't really many characters, and it just feels like a weird way to approach a horror game.
Signals while you're out there. It wouldn't hurt to follow them to find out what...
No way. The core first.
The beginning of the game is probably the hardest and least enjoyable part. I spent several play sessions just getting completely slaughtered in the open world. Enemies are unpredictable, sneaking doesn't really seem to work until you've upgraded it a few times, and because there's no dodge move or roll or anything like that, if you get caught without enough ammo in a situation, you're screwed. Enemies will alert other enemies, and before you know it, you'll have 5 or 6 different monsters that you didn't even know were around on top of you, ripping you to shreds. Oh, and you won't be able to run away because your endurance meter is pathetic at first, and you'll quickly be reduced to casually jogging for your life. Speaking of jogging, what the hell is up with Sebastian's walking animation? Why? After a few hours of getting my ass handed to me, I was able to get into a groove of scavenging for weapon parts, sneaking past most enemies, finding workbenches and crafting more supplies and upgrading my stuff, until I was competent enough to survive a fight with a couple monsters at a time.
Out of ammo.
Once I got over that hump, the game felt a lot better. The story opened up and the objectives became clearer, and I started to get that this is the last game but a little bit better feeling that I generally expect from a good sequel. And eventually you'll get into a groove that will feel familiar to anyone that's played through Resident Evil 4 or the Dead Space games, and this is where the game shines. Even though by the end of the game, Sebastian still felt like a stiff and ultimately forgettable character, I did appreciate the fact that he had more lines and more motivation than last time. In this game, Sebastian's daughter is at stake, and you can tell that they really put more effort into trying to make Sebastian feel more relatable and human and have the player care about him a little bit more. So the character development of Sebastian in this game is a marginal improvement over the last one, but an improvement nonetheless.
No. Please. I couldn't. I wanted to.
And there is a shooting gallery mode that you can access from Sebastian's office. It's not totally necessary by any means, but it is a fun distraction, and it's a good way to earn some extra green gel and weapon parts if you need them. The final few hours of the game are easily the best in my opinion. Loose ends are mostly tied up, the final boss is awesome, and there's even a scene near the very end that switches things up and you play as Kidman for a little bit. I like that.
Hang on, Sebastian.
The Evil Within 2 takes a few steps forward in some areas, and it takes a few steps back in some other areas. There are better horror games, and there are certainly better open world games to play this year. That being said, I wouldn't say it's a wash. I wouldn't say it's something to pass over. My overall feeling of the game was dramatically improved by how good the last third of it really is. The Evil Within 2 is by no means a perfect game. I wouldn't even say it's a particularly great game, but there is plenty to enjoy here once it really gets going, and I would say that the good ultimately ends up outweighing the bad in the end.